Okay, now I'd kind of like to talk a little bit about charts. I know I had the video last week on charts. It was somebody else's video. But this week I'd just like to go over some additional kinds of charts and what they're good for. So first of all, if we click here and drag to select this data, so if we click and drag to select the data, then we can click this button, Insert Chart, to add more charts. The other way we can do it is, of course, once we have data selected by clicking and dragging, we can click Insert and then Chart here down at the bottom of the list. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And it recommends these, but I don't really want any of those. I'm going to click on Chart and I'm going to find Pie Chart and I'm going to insert that. This may look familiar. I used one of these in the syllabus. So then we're not going to check customize or anything this time. We're just going to hit insert and there we go. And now we can of course move it around. We can put it wherever we want. We can resize it. And we can see these are the values. And while this quick edit mode is on, we can do things like this. We can change the title. We can change the color of these little slices. So if we want this to go from orange to red, we can do that. We can also change the font of the whole thing. We can do all kinds of different changes. Now if we put it in view mode, we can actually see that these individual slices represent these values. So what a pie chart is really good for is showing the constituent parts of a whole. That's what a pie chart is really good for. Now if we click this little downward facing arrow, so this little downward facing arrow right here in the upper right corner, and then click on Advanced Edit, we can do a bunch of different things. In here, this is the Customize tab that we looked at earlier. All of the things I talked about earlier we can change here. So we can change this from percentage to value to label, which we don't have a label. So let's go ahead and put that on value because that makes more sense. Now we have these different slices where we can change the color. We can make it 3D. We can click maximize, which will make it take up the maximum amount of room. Now one thing that's important with a chart is to get some accurate labels, and you can see we don't have any labels here. So I'm just going to click this arrow and click delete chart. So I'm going to click and drag to get this data, but then I'm going to drag to the left to get these dates as well. Then I'm going to click this button, the insert chart button, and I'm going to go to charts, select pie chart and this chart again, and now you can see we're going to have labels, so we can actually see what percentage goes along with the date, and so that's a good way of sort of labeling it. But now I want to look at actually a line graph. I'm going to actually scroll up to the top of the data, so we see we have quite a bit more, and I'm going to click and drag and just select all of it. So I have all of this data selected, and then I'm going to click this insert chart button. And then this is actually the chart I'm interested in, but I would like to pick it out of the overall list of them. So I'm going to click on line chart here, and I actually like the smooth line chart, so I'm going to pick that. That's just sort of a style preference. And now you can sort of see we have charts, we have lines on the chart sort of progressing from left to right that indicate sort of change over time. And that's what a line chart is really good for. It's really good for showing how values change over time. So I'm going to click on Customize because I want to kind of make this look a little different. And let's see. So for Pool Kitty, that's my cat. You can see he's pretty good with money. I'm going to go ahead and change the line thickness to 1. And the point size to 2, and that's pretty good. I like this because it illustrates that each of these little spots represent a value. And now I'm going to do that for the rest of them, but you guys don't really want to watch that, so I'm going to edit that. Okay, now we're done. We're to Jules. That's my wife's cat, and you can see she's not particularly good with money. She's kind of lost most of hers over the course of the year. So now we've made these changes. That looks pretty good, but I'd kind of like it to take up a little bit more room to make it a little bit more readable. So I'm actually going to click maximize and then hit insert. Now we can see this is a pretty good looking chart. It has a lot of information in it. It conveys a good meaning. I'm going to click and drag this over here so we can look at that next to our data. Now this is a very good visual way of seeing this data. That's a really good way of creating a chart. Now I would like to be able to change this chart title, but I can't because it's been maximized. So in order to change the chart title, I'm going to click Advanced Edit, come in here and change it, and I'm going to call it something like Line Chart Display. And I'm going to click Update. And now that shows up. So one more thing I want to show you, I mentioned this earlier, I'm going to click Copy Chart, and it says Copying to Web Clipboard. Copy complete. Okay, what does that mean? I'm going to come over here to this other tab, where you may remember this from an earlier video if you've watched that one when we were talking about more word processing, where now I can go to Edit, Web Clipboard, and look at that. I can paste that chart. That's really super handy when you're working on different kinds of documents. This works across all of the Google apps, so if you wanted to put this in a presentation, that's how you would do that as well. Very, 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 very useful. Very useful. So again, the way you do that is you click this arrow and you go Copy Chart. And that'll copy it to your web clipboard. And then you come over to any other product, and you actually have to go to Edit, and then Web Clipboard, and then you can pick it out of the line of charts. You can see I was doing this a lot when I was getting ready to demo this for you guys. So let's go ahead and clear all those out. But that's how you would do that. It's very useful. So that's a line chart. Now let's look at a bar chart. Again, I'm going to click and drag to select all of this information. I'm going to click Insert Chart, and it's right there, but again I want to look at the charts so we can maybe sort of contrast that with some of the other ones. Here's a column chart. You can see the main difference between a bar chart and a column chart is the way the text is oriented. We have an area chart, scatter chart, and this actually illustrates a good point. If the data doesn't really work for the type of chart, it'll be grayed out, so that way you can kind of get a good feel for what'll work and what won't. But I actually, instead of, no, let's go ahead and do a bar chart. So let me go ahead and insert that. So here we see a bar chart, and these are really good if you want to compare sort of similar values across multiple entities. So suppose you had, well, I'm looking at Dungeons and Dragons characters, so we have two characters that all have similar stats, and this allows us to compare them. So one thing that this could actually be used for that may be a little bit more useful is, say you had a goal and an actual. And you can see the chart will update automatically when you change where its data is coming from. So you can see in some of these the actual far exceeds the goal. Some of them the goal was, well, maybe a little ambitious. But that's kind of what a bar chart would be good for, sort of the visual display of similar data across multiple entities. So that's a bar chart. Now I'd like to look at a column chart. Again, I select all this data by clicking and dragging. I'm going to actually click Insert and go to Chart this time. And I would like to look at a column chart. I'm going to insert that. You can see this is sort of a column chart is very similar to a bar chart. The only major difference is the way the data is arranged. It doesn't really differ in any way from a bar chart other than a column chart goes up and down. So I'm actually going to delete this and look at something that's a little bit more interesting. I think more interesting. I'm going to look at an area chart. Like this one with, well, that's a little messy. Let's look at this one. This is another way of displaying sort of similar data across multiple variables. So we have, these would be sort of, you could think of these as regions and these as sort of their performance. So number one would be how does number one perform in these various regions? How does number two perform? How does number three perform? And you can kind of see how they relate to one another that way. It's kind of a different way of displaying that data. And now finally I'd like to look at a scatter plot. I'm going to select all of this data. Again, you select all the data by clicking in the upper left of the range you're interested in and dragging to the right to get all 4 columns, and then dragging down, and it'll automatically scroll to collect all of this data. Now I'm going to go Insert, Chart, and the one we want isn't in the list, so I'm going to click on Chart, Scatter, and pick this one. Insert. Now a scatter plot or scatter chart is really handy if you have sort of one similar variable and a bunch of other things and how they perform. So what this is basically looking at is you have this position along the horizontal axis. So the horizontal axis are all of these values, and then the vertical axis are these values. So you can see at point 1, this is where pie performs, this is where cookies perform, this is where cake performs. And typically, if you're looking at the view mode, when you hover over these, it gives you those values. Now this is used in scientific data a lot. It allows you to sort of plot a bunch of values, and you can kind of figure out trend lines, which they don't really show up here, but if you have something like, you can kind of see all the reds are kind of collected. But anyway, I really just wanted you to see how to create some different charts and kind of get a feel for how you would use those. One thing to look at, I posted a link for a poster that sort of gives a good overview of what all of the different charts are used for. It's a good idea to kind of look over that. Right, that does it for charts.